Hey guys, Brian here with Mustang Ecoboost Garage, and today we're going to be installing this grill mesh on my 2019 Ecoboost Mustang. Alright guys, so we're installing this grill mesh on my 2019 Ecoboost Mustang today, and the very first thing that we're going to want to do is get this car up in the air a little bit. I'm going to jack up just the front. I'm going to put it on jack stands so I can get both of the front wheels off so that we can access the wheel bins that's going to aid us in taking off the front bumper. So with the car up on jack stands and the front wheels removed from the vehicle, I can access the wheel bins to get the push pins out to try to take the bumper off. Okay guys, so I got the hood opened up, and what I'm going to do first is take off this plastic cover on the top of the bumper here. You take a flathead screwdriver just like this, and you can just pry up, just kind of twist it, and then once it's pried up, you can use your fingers to grab the rest of it and pop it up. With all of the push pins removed, I'm going to just pop this cover off and set it off to the side. Make sure you keep track of all the little pieces, because if they fall out, you can easily lose them. I usually use Ziploc baggies or something like that to hold all of my hardware until the end of the project. So with this top cover removed, I have access to these bolts across the top of the bumper here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove them. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the bigger ones. I think these are 8mm, and then 2 of the smaller ones that I think are about 5 or 5.5. So let's go ahead and get these things off. Okay, I'm going to leave one in the center here just until last, because I want to keep that to support the weight of the bumper while I'm getting the side bolts off. Alright, so now I'm going to take off all the bolts on the bottom of the bumper here to separate the bumper from the brush guard. So with all the 7mm bolts that were removed from the bottom of the bumper, we should be able to separate it from the underneath brush guard. Now all we have to do is just get the 2 bolts in here and 2 bolts on the other side fender well off, and then take the 1 bolt that's still remaining on the top that's supporting all of the weight. Okay, so now there's 2 bolts up inside of these fender wells here that have to come out, and they're both 10mm. So I've got my ratchet on one of them already. just gonna break them both loose. And then I should be able to reach in there by hand and get them out the rest of the way. So with these two bolts removed, I'm going to move on to the next side. So as you can see, some of these push buttons here actually attach the wheel bin to the bumper. So these have to be separated. So for these ones, you just kind of push it in and then you should be able to pop them out. Those are pretty easy. So for these ones, you just take your screwdriver again and pry it apart, and then it should pop out. Now that this is out, you should be able to separate. Oh, there's one more. Yeah, you should be able to separate the bumper. Now, when you're taking the bumper off, there's one of those plastic Christmas tree deals in between the two bolts that you removed in the fender weld here. So what you're going to have to do, I'm going to put some tape on here, and then I'm going to pry it away with a pry bar or a plastic pry tool so that it doesn't scratch the paint. But basically you just want to put some downward pressure on it as you're removing the bumper and lifting it down so that way it separates. Once you get it off of this Christmas tree, you can do the same thing on the other side. And then last but not least, we'll do that bolt in the center and we can lift it off. Okay, so you can see I've got tape here separating the bumper from the fender, and I'm just going to use this plastic tool here to pry down on the bumper to separate that little plastic Christmas tree that's up inside of there. And there you go. So here's where the two bolts that I removed in the fender well were, and right between them is that Christmas tree plastic fastener. So that's what we're trying to get off. All those little ridges on there get stuck between the on the metal, so you just got to kind of pry it down. So now with this one removed, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now in.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so yeah, I forgot to do the other things in the wheel bin here, so I'm just going to pop these out, same as the other side, and then it should detach from the fascia. That one out. All right, so there we go. Now that one last bolt up top, and the whole bumper should be able to be removed. Okay, so last bolt on the top. Now the bumper should lift off the car. Now we got to disconnect the lights down here, so I'm gonna have to. It's kind of tricky, but you got to hold and support the weight while you're disconnecting the light on that side, and then go over to this side, and that's it. Back up, I gotta run the horses. All right, there we go. Bumper's off the car. So we got the bumper off the car the other night, and it was kind of late, so we went ahead and wrapped things up. I'm going to start fresh today. So we got the bumper off. We're going to flip the bumper over so that we can access the back side to try to get these grills off the car. You want to be careful not to scratch up the paint when you're flipping it over. That's why I've got these towels here to protect it when I'm setting it down on my sawhorses. Now that we have the bumper flipped over, you can see all these little tabs here that have to be removed to get access to the grills. So I'm going to try to get these things popped off very carefully so that you don't break any of the plastic. This one's already removed. So this car is a performance pack car, so it does not have the active grille shutters, but it still has this this compression system here that goes in front of the bumper, the brace bar, the bumper bar. So now I got this thing off, we should be able to access the grills. Now the grills have very similar tabs here. They're just basically going to get pried away. Sometimes you just need a tool that has a little bit more leverage. And you see what I'm kind of doing here is I'm putting my thumb up against the painted tab, and I'm using the tool to pry from underneath. Of course, now when I'm showing you, it's not working. There we go. But you just want to be careful that you don't bust anything while you're doing this. So I'm just sticking the pry bar underneath, and then once I get this thing, the tension off of it, I just twist it, and it's popping out. So the upper grill is now removed. And I'm just going to set it off to the side for right now until I get the lower one off. That way I can find a good workplace to get these things going. Okay. So the corner was kind of tricky. I had to use some prying action on the corner piece there while I was getting these other two sections loose. Now that that's loose, I'm just going to work it all the way down. And I'm trying to use my hands as much as possible instead of using a tool, because I really don't want to be able to snap these things off accidentally, because we are going to be reusing this whole structure here to attach the new grill mesh that I purchased. And this is just a little plastic scraper tool. You can get these pretty much at any hardware store. This one's kind of stuck. There we go. All right, so now both grills are removed. Okay, so now that we got a trace, I'm just going to cut the zip ties off. Those were only temporary, just so I can get my line marked. And we'll see how it looks. There we go. I'll move the grill out of the way, and we have a line that we can use for cutting. Now this material is actually same on both sides. So the side with the line is the side that I can use to make the bends, the folds, because that's going to go on the inside, and that way you're not going to see it. Alright, so I've got a couple different kinds of cutters here. You can use regular tin snips or shears or whatever you want that works good, but this is kind of thicker material, so I want something that's going to be able to cut through it very easily. So these are going to work pretty good, and I think these over here, these Nipex pliers, they have a lot of leverage because they have a longer handle. So yeah, either one of these will work pretty good. So basically what I'm going to do is, I left myself about an inch, maybe an inch and a half at the top that I'm going to use to fold around, that's going to wrap around this plastic here. So I'm going to do the same thing all the way around. So wherever my line is, I'm going to make sure that I cut and leave at least about an inch, maybe an inch and a half of the material there, so that I can fold it over when the time comes. keep in mind that the first time that you're making your bends, you're not going to go completely 90 degrees. You just want to get it in the basic shape that you want it to be in, so that way you can go back to your piece here and measure, and you're going to have to do that a couple times and maybe readjust and maybe cut some more off or something. But you just got to keep working it until you get it the way that you want it to fit. Because of the fact that it's not conforming to the shape, I'm probably going to have to make some V-cuts in here, and that way it'll relieve some of the pressure from this big bar going across the top there, and then we should be able to form it around. Alright, so now with all that cut, this should be a lot more flexible and bendable, which it is. So I just put some red electrical tape around the outside edge where I'm going to be bending, so that way I have a good mark. Just like I said, these zip ties were only temporary, so I could get that tape on. The crayon that I used earlier didn't really hold up, so you guys may be able to skip that step if you use a Sharpie or something, like a silver Sharpie would work pretty good on this kind of material. Something better to put a line there where it's not going to be so invisible and fall off as you're working, as mine did. So I'm just going to take the zip ties off. So now I know where I've got it bend, so I can try to get this thing formed around where it's going to go. Okay, so with the zip ties removed and the tape line there, I'm going to go to the corners, and I'm going to cut these sections out of the corner, like so. So that way if I fold this down and I fold that down, they're not going to get in the way of each other. So with the edges trimmed up, I made some cuts in each one of the little corner sections here to separate the pieces. So that way you can see the space right there. That way when I fold this down and fold that down, they're not going to get in each other's way. So with that all finished and everything trimmed up nice and neat, I'm going to go ahead and start bending. So I'm just grabbing with the pliers, and I'm going to fold down and use my hand to put pressure against it, like so. So with this step complete, next we're going to have to make our incision and cut all the way around here to get this old mesh out, and then just leave the frame behind. So what I did here is I just took some 3/4 inch electrical tape and I made a border all the way around, and I'm going to use that as a line that I can trace around with a marker. So I'm just taking my silver Sharpie and I'm going to use this tape right here to make my line. Now that we got the line, we can take the tape off. And the reason why we wanted to get the tape off is because when you're cutting it with the Dremel tool, if the blade hits the tape, it's going to get sticky stuff on the blade, and then it's not going to cut very sharp, and it's going to ruin the blade. So you definitely want to get the tape off before you make your cut. I'm going to take my Dremel, and I'm going to use a 543 cutting blade, cutting and shaping blade. Okay, so with the grill mesh removed with the pony on it, I'm going to set that off to the side, and I'm just going to kind of clean up the little burrs and stuff with my fingers all the way around. And then I'm going to take the Dremel and I'm going to smooth out the edge. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my tool here and I'm just going to kind of go across the edges. You can use this as a razor blade or a razor knife or something like that. This is it's called a deburring tool, and it's basically used for sheet metal, for drill bits, for when you're drilling holes and stuff like that. But you can also use it for plastic. You just have to use it lightly, and it just kind of takes off the outside burrs on the edge. You can go all the way around and then do the same thing on the inside. And it's going to leave you with a clean edge. So now that I've got my frame here all cleaned up, and I've got my mesh that's formed and fitted, I'm going to go ahead and start applying it on like this. Now that I got everything zip tied down, I'm just going to cut the tails off the zip ties, get them out of the way. And keep in mind, guys, this is not going to be as hard for the winner of the prize, because the other grill is already cut, shaped, and formed. All you're going to have to do is do the die grinding to get this thing off, and then zip tie it on and put the glue on. Okay, so with the tails cut off, I got some special glue for this product, for this project. And this is what they recommend on the website. It's automotive goop, automotive amazing goop. and it's supposed to be kind of like an RTV silicone based adhesive. So basically it's going to allow it to bend and flex with the motion of the car. It's not going to be really rigid where it cracks or breaks the plastic. And it has a 24-hour cure time. So once I get the glue applied, I'm going to leave it sit in the garage overnight. Really hot in here, so it should dry up probably faster than 24 hours, but I'll wait until tomorrow before I start putting stuff back together. Brand new, so you know, inside of the little cap there, you got a puncture tool, so you can puncture it. And basically just apply it around the edges where you want this thing to stick. Okay. And be really careful not to get it on the inside. Just keep it on the outside edge and you should be fine. You can try to use a fan or something if you want to allow it to start setting up so it doesn't drip down the side of the plastic. Okay, so now that I'm finished gluing the mesh all on, I'm going to let it sit on this piece of cardboard and cure up overnight. So with the upper grill mesh section curing, I'm going to start working on the lower section. And as you can see, the grill mesh that I received is not quite long enough to cover the whole bottom section from end to end. This is a 48-inch section, and it's just not long enough. So the kit that you purchase on the website there for customcargrills.com has the upper section pre-cut and the lower section just for this area right here, the opening. But what I want to do is I want to cover it basically from end to end, but that's impossible, so I'm going to have to piece it together. I'm going to make a section for this area, and I'm going to cut this area out, and I'm going to make a section for this area and cut this area out, and then a separate section just for the center. And I'm going to see if I can squeeze all three of those pieces out of this remaining section of grill mesh that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start laying it out, tracing it out, and start cutting and see if I can somehow piece together three sections out of this mesh. So the point is, guys, is to just keep that in mind if you're trying to order some of this mesh material from the website there. Make sure that you take proper measurements beforehand, that you're going to have enough grill mesh material to cover the area that you're trying to fabricate. So with my three sections traced out, I'm going to start cutting them out one by one. I've already started on this end over here. I'm just going to kind of work my way around and see if I can manage to get those three pieces out of this one mesh. Okay, so I decided to get my Dremel and put a metal cutting bit on here, and I'm going to use this to make a better line instead of using those dikes now that I got the excessive material off. So I'm just going to kind of cut around there and then do the same thing on that side. I went ahead and trimmed these pieces up a little bit so they fit more snug up inside like that, and same thing over here like that, trimming it around these little areas where it's going to be attachment points are to the bumper, so that way it doesn't block the pieces from going through. And this one right here needs a little bit trimming still, but I'm gonna go ahead and get the zip ties and zip tie it down and see how much trimming needs to be see how much it needs to be trimmed off. All right, so before I go ahead and zip tie these pieces onto the frame here, I'm going to take my Dremel and I'm going to cut around the outside edges, and I'm going to trim these center section out, and I made a line here for where I'm going to cut across to get this center grill piece out. so I finished cutting out the 3 sections here, as you can see. And then what I did is I took some files and I just kind of went along the edges and cleaned everything up, got it nice and smooth, got a nice edge all the way around. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And now I'm ready to secure the mesh on here with the zip ties so that I can get it ready for glue. All right, so I've got all my zip ties in place. I'm just gonna cut off the last few tails here and then show you how it looks from the front side. As I was going along, I had to make some adjustments. I had to make some trims where the pieces are kind of connecting together and stuff like that. Use the zip ties to suck it in a little bit more. So you can see that's kind of how it's going to look from the front. Not too bad. So I'm going to start applying the glue here. I'm just using a piece of a zip tie to kind of paint the glue on certain areas where it's really tight. So with the glue all in place, I'm going to let this dry overnight and get ready for the installation tomorrow. So far looking pretty good. So now that the glue is all dried and cured up, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting off all the zip ties and see how it looks. Okay, so the grille's all nice and cleaned up on the front side, looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and start the reinstallation. And I'm just going to start in the corners and just kind of work my way down. And now let's install the bumper insert. And this is basically the same as installing the other pieces. You just push it through the clips there until it clicks into place. All right, now we can install the bumper. There she is. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you guys think. Alright guys, so overall I'm pretty happy with the way it looks, the way it turned out. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, it doesn't look 100% factory, but you really can't see the blemishes on it unless you get up on and look in the little corner sections and stuff like that to see where some of the glue is. But if this is something that you think you might want to do and you want to subscribe to the channel to try to get your chance to win, then please like and share and all that stuff, and make sure you you help out, because as soon as the subscribers gets above 300, I'm going to be giving away that other hex piece. So remember, Mustang Mods Ecoboost Garage is your favorite place for all the mods on your S550 Ecoboost Mustangs. Peace out, fellas.